So you want to own a S63 powered BMW in 2025? You sure about that? This M6 came into the shop with an obvious bottom end knocking noise from the engine. The lower oil pan was removed, and we inspected and we found a ton of metal debris and bearing material throughout basically the entire bottom section of the oil pan. We did a compression test on it. All of the cylinders were within spec except for cylinder number 1, which was 30 psi lower. A borescope on cylinder 1 showed major cylinder wall scoring and a major amount of oil all around like the piston ring area. Financially, it doesn't really make sense to tear the engine down to visibly see the connecting rod bearings or the exact failure. But kind of with all the other diagnosis that we did, it was kind of concluded that the failure was really likely to lie within cylinder 1 connecting rod bearing, whether that be it spun or just completely wiped out. Either way, at a dealership level, we don't rebuild S63s or any engine for that matter, especially like bottom end stuff. We only do long block replacement, and that's kind of what you're looking at now. This isn't the first S63 that I've personally done or seen replaced in the shop. It's kind of definitely more a rare thing to see them with issues like this, but I've heard plenty of stories about them failing like this, more and more so as they get older. I think most people at this point kind of know how terribly bad the N63 engine is and all of its shortcomings. And when the N63 first came out, it really did seem like the M Motorsport division at BMW kind of took the N63 and kind of improved it and kind of made it a solid, reliable engine. But as more and more time goes on, it seems the S63 still has many of the same shortcomings of the N63, like failing guide seals, carbon buildup, turbocharger failures, piston and rod bearing failures, poor PCB systems, massive oil consumption issues labeled as normal operation. These failures can come on cars that are well maintained, just like this M6 was. It had all of its proper oil services done at the dealership. It was adult owned. It had no signs of abuse. It had about 60,000 miles on it, and it just kind of seemed like bad luck that the engine started knocking. The DCT transmission's kind of also a weak point on this car, so I've seen plenty of those fail, and I've heard a lot more failures online, so I don't think the transmission's exactly a awesome point of these cars either. I mean, it drives nice, but with none of these cars left in the factory warranty, your only hope of owning one of these S63 powered vehicles is a top-of-the-line aftermarket warranty, which in this case was really only willing to pay for a little more than half of the $48,000 engine replacement price tag. Otherwise, I would really save yourself the headache and heartbreak and get an S63 powered vehicle made after 2018, like an F90 M5. They seem to have been proving themselves to be a much more reliable engine platform, although time's going to tell if they are still destined to walk the same path as its predecessors. This large engine table we have at most BMW dealerships is awesome. It's like a 2-part table, hydraulically powered, and you can leave the transmission bolted to the engine and drop the whole thing out as one unit, and you can unbolt the transmission and just slide the back half of the table apart, and it separates the engine and transmission, leaving the transmission on the table. So it just makes it really convenient for dropping these motors out, because they really were designed to come out the bottom with pretty minimal effort. These cars have 2 DME control units, engine control units. They're actually coolant cooled as well. They're part of the turbocharger cooling circuit. So you have to kind of disconnect coolant lines from the DMEs and get them out of the way. These turbocharger coolant lines are getting replaced anyway, so we're just cutting them apart. This thing has no less than 900 hoses that have to get disconnected and all overlap and weave in and out of one another. Not too bad coming apart, but going back together, it's kind of a mess trying to figure out where everything goes. Here she is. All the glory. These rubber boots for the intake pipes off the intercoolers into the turbochargers, out of the turbochargers, were basically solid plastic at this point, so had to basically rip them apart to get them off and order brand new ones. And they actually only come as the whole mini intake elbow there from the intercooler up to the turbo. The only downside of this table, I wouldn't even call it a problem with the table. It's more so the lifts that we use. They don't go high enough, so trying to get the engine off of the table, you kind of have to move the subframe out of the way so that there's enough room to get it out. But here you can see the monstrosity in its hole. It's a lot going on. For those of you that have never seen one of these S63s out, or any of the N63 Plus V8s from BMW, you can see what I just took off on the side there was plastic. That's actually the intake manifold. They have the exhaust manifolds and the turbochargers inside of the valley of the engine, kind of referred to as like a hot V setup. So the heads are kind of like opposite of what, you know, an older V8 would be, with exhaust manifolds down on the bottom and an intake up top. So these ones just kind of reverse the flow and put everything into a real compact package in there, which means that the top side of the engine where those turbos are just gets so hot. It gets ridiculously hot, kind of cooks all the coolant lines in that area, cooks the PCV lines in that area. So, I mean, I get why they did it. It is a really good setup when it works really well. And when the engine is working the way that it's supposed to, it really is something else. But it does pose a lot of problems. We're going to be throwing these turbochargers in the trash. Since the motor had so much oil or metal in the oiling system, we are replacing everything that oiling circuit touches. So the engine's getting replaced. Both the exhaust turbochargers are getting replaced because they're fed oil. And also the engine oil cooler, as well as the oil cooler lines, are being replaced. That way there is no chance of any of that old metal that went through the old engine or any of the other systems getting into the oil. It's got a hole in the valve cover. So here I'm pulling the new engine out of the box, and there's a big hole in the valve cover. 2 spots there in the back corner. It looked like something poked the box. Like something slammed into the side of the box and broke the valve cover. So we tried to overnight a new valve cover because it didn't look like any metal got into the engine. It kind of looked like a piece had broken off, but it was all like right there and accessible. So we overnighted a new valve cover, but it didn't come overnight. It actually took like 2 or 3 days to get. So it really did slow the operation down because I had to kind of work around replacing everything without, you know, having to take everything back apart to replace the valve cover. So there was really only so far I could do or go with replacing all the new parts. But I was able to put the exhaust on and kind of lay the wiring harness on there and kind of get to the furthest point that I could without putting the engine back in the car, because doing the valve cover in the car is much harder. So just took them, probably lost a couple of hours on that just because of that, but eventually a new valve cover did show up and we were able to install it. All in all, personally, I really think twice about owning an older M5 or M6, to be honest, in the F10 era. You really got to be prepared for some big, expensive bills.